I hope everybody had a safe and wonderful holiday. Today is the 26th, which is the last day of the Murakumo event. I hope that means that your polls were also just as wonderful. Now, in a perfect world, you would have polled 4 Magatsu Storms and 4 Shiryukis. Now, I'm not really going to be talking about this deck build because I have a feeling that a lot of people watching this video did not poll as well as they would like. So the goal with both of the builds I'm going to show you is how to take advantage of Mandala Lord as a backup unit. See, Mandala Lord has a really good support system, which I will talk about throughout the video. These units will make up for his weakness as just a double rare, and allowing you to kind of build into some interesting variants for deck builds. So the first deck build I want to show you is if you did not pull Shiryuki, but did pull a playset of Magatsu, which I believe is the more powerful triple rare. Magatsu Storm allows the deck to have a way more aggressive playstyle, while still being able to keep a large chunk of cards in our hand. Magatsu is part of a ride chain, all of which allow you to call out copies of the current Vanguard you are on. These tokens will have boost, which means you're going to be able to go for these really powerful swings. The deck does not have retiring, so if your opponent has 2 interceptors, these big columns don't really mean much. Magatsu Storm, on the other hand, does have this really nice ability where when he attacks, it does not have to be at Vanguard. Counterblast 1, Persona Blast, and then you get to call a Magatsu from your hand. That can be any Magatsu. It can be the grade 1, the grade 2, or the grade 3. Probably not the grade 3 because you're going to be discarding those for his Persona Blast. This does allow the deck to have multi-attacking capabilities and be able to deal a second damage each turn. Magatsu himself also has the ability to recurrently call out 2 other copies of himself. Those will have boost, which means we'll have 10k boosters in the back row. And this will also be refilling our hand with more Magatsus later on for his Persona Blast. So as I said, our goal is to try to use Mandala Lord as a filler unit, while also trying to make the best use out of him. He has the ability that when he is attacked, you counterblast 1, Persona Blast, and the opponent's unit gets minus 10k. If the opponent's unit is going to be bigger than your Vanguard anyway, the 10k will not activate. Now, Shiryuki also has a Persona Blast ability, which means all 3 boss monsters in the Murakumo line have Persona Blast. And I hate Persona Blast. I think it's like the worst mechanic in the game. That being said, Murakumo is the most Persona Blast friendly. This is because the grade 2 will allow you to get more copies of Magatsu. Magatsu is also making copies of himself anyway. Shiryuki has an on-place ability to get more copies of herself in your hand. And Mandala Lord has some really good support units in Cursed Breath and Turbulent Edge. Both of them have the ability that when they hit the Vanguard, you get to check the top 5 cards of your deck and add a Mandala Lord to your hand. That means do not set Mandala Lord as your heal trigger. Getting to play the whole Magatsu engine in this build is really powerful because that means on our turn 2 play, when we have 2 grade 2 Magatsus in the back row, we're going to have a really easy time possibly dealing them 3 damage if they do not have any interceptors. This is obviously easier if we are going first because they will be on their grade 1. But even if they're on their grade 2, using units such as the 12k attacker from Magatsus means that our units are going to be able to hit over magic numbers anyway. So as long as they do not place 2 interceptors, we're going to be able to deal a lot of damage early game with this deck, which is going to be necessary because after that turn 2 play, it's going to be kind of a slower game, especially when we have to go for the Mandala Lord plays. Something you'll notice about both builds is besides just being Persona Blast heavy, it is also counterblast heavy. There is no way to countercharge currently with Murakumo. Magatsu is using up to 3 counterblasts in a turn, and Mandala Lord is using a counterblast every time he is blocking. With that said, that is why I'm only playing 1 Ouroboros cart. I think it's a really powerful unit, especially when you are low on hand size and just need to get past interceptors. But since he uses counterblast, how you have to look at that is 1 less PG for Mandala Lord and 1 less offensive play from Magatsu. I'm then playing 1 Tamamo just as a filler, as a backup ride, and then I'm playing 1 13k attacker when boosted. This means if he is being boosted by a Magatsu, he is attacking for 23, which hits over magic numbers, basically over anything. He is also the reason why we are playing 1 copy of the 8k vanilla, because that makes a 21 column. The reason I'm playing like a weird variant in the grade 2 section with the 3 Cursed Breath, the 3 12k, and the 3 10k vanilla is because Cursed Breath being an 8k makes it so he can't hit by himself. you have to boost him. So I don't really want to draw into him on a turn that I need to get past an interceptor. The 12k attacker is very nice, but there are going to be turns where you're going to be on Mandala, which means he is then a 7k attacker. And then the same issue, he needs a booster. So that's why I still really like the 10k vanilla in here, because whenever you lay him, you'll be happy. I'm going for the 9 draw variant. This is because I really want to draw into our pieces, because every build of Murakumo I've seen is very piece reliant. You need your Magatsus for the Ride Chain and the Persona Blast. You need your Mandalas and or the grade 2 and grade 1 supporter just to get more Mandalas in your hand. There are variants that are running crits. There are variants playing stands, all of which I think are just as powerful. I just like the consistency and defensive capabilities that the draw trigger gives us. Now, looking at the Shiryuki build, which is where you did not pull any Magatsus, this variant I'm having to go a lot more defensive, because without the Magatsu aggression, the deck gets a lot weaker. Something to point out is we are still playing the Magatsu Ride Chain between the 1 and the 2. That is because the turn 2 play that the grade 1 to grade 2 gives us is still very powerful, so we still don't want to miss out on that. I'm now playing our grade 3 Searcher as our starter. This is because both our Shiryuki and our Mandala both need Persona Blast, so even if we have one in our hand, we're going to need a second one. Shiryuki obviously has the same ability as Mandala. She does have to be in Limit Break, but she does do minus 20k, which is an almost guaranteed PG. She does have that on-place ability I was talking about of going to get herself another copy. She still is doing that neg thing that I was talking about, where she is very counterblast heavy. So if you have to call her counterblast 2 to add that copy to your hand, you're then going to be using up a lot of the counterblasts you're going to want to use as PG fodder. That being said, besides Mandala, we don't really care about using any other form of counterblast, so it's okay to do this. I'm playing more Cursed Breath in this variant. That's because we just really need to get to those Mandalas, because if we're not PGing, we're not doing anything. So a unit that I'm seeing a lot of people playing that I have no interest in is Zanbaku. Zanbaku says at the start of your opponent's ride phase, if your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, your opponent may discard a card from your hand. If they do not, they cannot normal ride during the ride phase. Basically, this is our substitute as a break ride, and all he does is stop our opponent from break riding. Wait, he doesn't even stop the opponent from break riding. He just makes it so they have to like slightly neg themselves, but then all that's doing is like slowing them down slightly to then punch us in the face really hard. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't stop them from break riding. It just makes it slightly more inconvenience for them. So I don't really like him. I understand why people are playing him, but I just don't think he really adds anything to the deck. So some lines of play. In both builds, like I said, the grade 1 to grade 2 rush is really important. It's going to allow us to get some early game pressure and allow us to either really press on that with the Magatsu plays, or really kind of lean on that in the later game if we're having to go for a Shiryuki and or Mandala play. Since we don't play any crits or stands, we don't really care at what point our Vanguard is attacking. Also, Mandala doesn't need to attack Vanguard to activate, so that means using units like Cursed Breath and Turbulent Edge are a lot easier to hit at their Vanguard, because we don't care if they are the last one to attack. With the Shiryuki plays, I'm usually going very defensive and just kind of going for that slow, grindier game. These are the plays where you're laying every grade 2 possible, but once you use up all your counterblasts, you're kind of dead meat, so just understand that and keep an eye on that. It is very rare when I'm holding a Magatsu in my hand that I choose to ever go for a Mandala or Shiryuki. This is because Magatsu just gives the deck its only real win con. This does mean the second we ride him, we are kind of saying goodbye to a lot of PGs that Mandala and Shiryuki is going to give us. Since he's going to be using up all of our counterblast, that means we're not really going to be having any for the late game to then use Shiryuki. So once you ride Magatsu, you kind of just have to accept that you're going to be going for a more balls to the wall approach to your game. Mandala feels just as powerful as Shiryuki. You can make defenses that Shiryuki is just overall a better card, because if you like sit the two next to each other, the only thing that Mandala has over Shiryuki is that he doesn't need limit break. I guess you can make defenses that you don't really care about that, because Shiryuki is defending better and Mandala has the possibility of not defending at all. I like to defend that because I really believe that the Cursed Breath and Turbulent Edge can really give the deck some plussing and defensive capabilities that Shiryuki cannot give the deck without having to use up a lot of counterblast. With this draw variant, you're going to have a lot of games where you just have a load of cards in your hand, which means you're going to have a lot of flexibility in what units you're placing out. And it makes it so it's really fun to kind of experiment against different opponents. And like I mentioned earlier, you can play this deck with any kind of trigger lineup and still have a very cool deck build. You can play this deck with really any grade 3s you want because Mandala can really fill in some units. Basically what I'm trying to say is no matter how you build the deck, you're going to have a good deck. I do not recommend playing Shiryuki unless you have 4 copies of her, because she's going to be very hard to get more copies of herself in hand. Magatsu, on the other hand, I feel like the deck is playable once you get to 2 copies. Him being part of the ride chain does give it a plus and minus where you can't really ride other units in the deck. It does mean that you're going to be able to get more copies of him. It means he's going to make more copies of himself very easily. So please feel free to experiment. Please send me some of your deck lists. I'd love to see them. Hit me up on Twitter, Charles Dinkles. If you would like to support me this holiday season, I'd really appreciate it. Just hit up the Triple Rare brand. They'll be the first link in the description. Hope you liked the little parkour edit at the beginning. That was really fun to make with my roommate. Once again, happy holidays. Continue to stay safe. We're going to make it through this, guys. I never know how to end these. That's all I got.